Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this important side event on strengthening the girls' right at the United Nations. My name is Felicity. I'll be moderating today's discussion, and I'm delighted to welcome you on behalf of Plan International. We'd like to thank our co-sponsors and partners today, the Permanent Missions of Australia and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in Geneva, as well as the UN Women, Child Rights Connect, and She Leads. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping rules to ensure that our event runs smoothly and effectively. For the safety of everyone present in the room, we'd like to kindly ask you not to take photos and/or video or audio record during this side event. Only our official photographer will be allowed to take photos of this event, and we thank you in advance for that. This event is also hybrid and being recorded through WebEx. We also have French and English simultaneous interpretations available in the room, so please do not hesitate to switch channels accordingly. The French will be in channel 3. We have a packed agenda today, so we kindly ask all our panelists to adhere to their allocated time slots to ensure that we stay on schedule. We have a dedicated time for discussions and interactions at the end of the session, so please hold your questions until the designated Q&A time. We also welcome questions through the chat function online for those of you joining us on WebEx. We are excited about the discussion we'll have today and the insights our panelists will share. Today, we're here to explore the findings of Plan International's upcoming report, Girls' Rights are Human Rights. Our panel today will highlight the progress made over the past 7 years advancing girls' rights at the UN, focusing particularly on age, gender, and diversity-sensitive approaches. Additionally, we will discuss how such progress is reflected at a national and local level and explore strategies to strengthen human rights of girls. As a youth advocate, the issue of girls' rights is very close to my heart. Too often, the voices of girls remain suppressed, battling multiple social, cultural, and political barriers. Their rights are often forgotten and in most cases, even seen as a luxury. Girls' rights are human rights, and we must continue to work on mitigating the unique challenges girls face in exercising them. I was once asked, why is it important to emphasize gender-responsive and gender-sensitive approaches? Why the need to mention girls and young women specifically? Can't they be included in youth or women? You may also be wondering the same thing, and my answer is simple: to change the default setting. A few years ago, I read in an article that women are 73% more likely to get injured in an event of a car accident because cars are designed with the male body in mind. They are the default customer. And around the world today, owing to barriers they face due to age and gender, girls are often dealt with the short end of the stick when they try to exercise their rights. We need to change that. We need to change the default. And gender, age, and diversity responsive and sensitive approaches aim to do that. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Ambassador Amanda Gourley, Permanent Representative at the Permanent Mission of Australia to the UN in Geneva, who will provide us with some opening remarks. Before being appointed as a permanent representative in February 2022, Ambassador Gourley, you served as the first Assistant Secretary within the International Security Division and Ambassador for Arms Control and Counter-Proliferation at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Australia. Welcome, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felicity, and thank you for your wise words, and welcome, friends, to this session today. We think it's really fitting that during today's all-day discussion on women's human rights that we take the next hour to reflect on the human rights of girls. And as Felicity has said, girls' rights are human rights. Girls around the world should enjoy all the rights and freedoms set out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as the specific protections in the CEDAW Convention and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Girls, young women and gender diverse young people are leaders, activists and learners. They are complex and multidimensional people with intersecting identities and dynamic lived experiences. The girls of today have lived through history-defining moments such as the COVID-19 pandemic, the ongoing climate emergency and armed conflicts. These moments will continue to shape and impact their lives in ways that we are yet to fully understand. And we know that when girls are educated and supported, their families and communities benefit, including men and boys, because gender inequality affects everyone. By standing with girls and supporting them to speak up and know their rights and lead, we're working towards a better, more equal world for all of us. But there is, of course, much to be done to achieve this vision. Plan International's research shows that globally, more than 132 million girls are not in school. Every year, nearly 12 million girls are married before the age of 18, and nearly 12 million girls give birth. In Australia, we continue to work hard to address our own challenges. For example, rates of gender-based violence are disproportionately higher amongst First Nations girls and young women than in our non-Indigenous communities. Australia shares the grave concerns of many of you that despite the urgent need to protect and promote the human rights of girls, the multilateral system is facing a global pushback against gender equality, including right now during the 56th Human Rights Council, where we strive to protect our hard-won advances on gender equality. It is important for us to call out this for what it is. We are witnessing a coordinated, well-resourced campaign to undermine our long-standing commitment to gender equality. Gender equality and the human rights of women and girls are being used by some to divide, used to seed doubts about the benefits of multilateralism and democracy, and to unwind our shared commitment to the better world promised by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And as a result, Plan International's research has found that progress on achieving girls' rights has stalled over the past decade, if not regressed, because of the anti-rights movement. And it is for this reason that gender equality sits at the heart of Australia's international engagement. I'm honoured to share this panel with UN Women as one of its global top government funders and with Plan International, the Australian branch of which we fund to deliver life-changing programs for our neighbours in the Indo-Pacific. Here in Geneva, the Indo-Pacific region may be on the opposite side of the world, but it is at the forefront of our minds when it comes to gender equality. We have committed that 80% of our international development assistance must effectively contribute to gender equality. I'd like to share two examples with you. In partnerships with the Pacific community and Pacific organisations, Australia supports Pacific Girl, the only program in the region dedicated to advancing the human rights and opportunities for girls. Since 2019, more than 2,500 girls have completed training on human rights, gender and ending violence against women and girls, and more than 1,000 girls have embarked on local and regional advocacy initiatives. And our ASEAN Australia counter-trafficking program supports the rights and needs of girls who are victim survivors of child marriage and trafficking. Domestically, we are committed to Australia walking the talk. We've seen important progress made in access to education and educational outcomes. The number of First Nations girls who achieved a certificate, diploma or degree almost doubled from 2008 to 2015. And in the decade to 2019, the number of adolescent pregnancies in Australia halved. And in 2022, education ministers around Australia agreed to mandate age-appropriate consent and respectful relationships education from foundation to year 10 in all Australian schools. I want to close by sharing the words of an inspiring Australian human rights defender, Yasmin Poole, a young woman herself, who is one of Plan International's Australia's ambassadors. When asked to deliver one message to decision makers on girls' human rights, she said, "Girls are watching you. We are smart, we are informed, and we deeply care about our future. We will eventually vote. Girls' voices are powerful. We have unique visions for creating a better future and can use our lived experience to spotlight the barriers that girls are facing across systems like education and employment. Platform us, hear us, and see us in our diversity." Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And indeed, when girls are educated and supported, their communities, including men and boys, are also supported. I love to hear the incredible work Australia is doing to advance girls' rights and ensure gender equality. Walking the talk is indeed important and ensuring gender equality in all sectors across systems. Allow me to now introduce Charlotte Stemmer, UN representative and head of Geneva office at Plan International, and Claire Mahon, executive director at Global Human Rights Group. Charlotte has extensive experience leading humanitarian responses and developing capacity strengthening projects with NGOs across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Claire is executive director of the Global Human Rights Group, a Geneva-based organization specializing in the UN human rights mechanisms. Before I give the floor to you, I want to ask Charlotte, why is it important to work on strengthening girls' rights at the UN? And can you please tell us a bit more about the background behind the research? And Claire, from the research you're currently conducting, can you share with us preliminary findings and tell us how much progress there has been in strengthening girls' rights at the UN?
Excellencies, colleagues, guests and friends, we are delighted to welcome you today to discuss the human rights of girls, and more specifically, their advancement and progress at the United Nations and in international law and policy. We're so pleased to have the participation of Felicity and Koratumu so that we can learn from their first-hand experiences, and this will help us understand how we can further bridge the gaps within spaces like the UN to promote the rights of girls more effectively. It also provides us with a great opportunity to present some of the preliminary findings of our research into girls' rights. At Plan International, we recognise that girls remain the largest group excluded globally. They're facing discrimination and abuse due to their age and gender. This double discrimination impacts them at all stages of their early lives up to adulthood and is often compounded by other intersectional factors. As highlighted by Ambassador Ghorley, millions of girls are disproportionately disadvantaged in education, health, work and family life, especially in the world's poorest countries. This disadvantage is magnified when other factors like poverty, ethnicity and disability intersect, and where gender stereotyping and unequal power relations prevail. But at the same time, girls all around the world are defying these gender and age-related social norms to drive change at the local, national, regional and global levels. Worldwide, girls are leading movements for social and gender equality through their engagement in their political life and their advocacy. The girls' rights movement has been gaining strength in the last 10 years, in particular since the adoption of the International Day of the Girl in 2012. We've seen critical progress on outcomes in early childhood for girls, primary education, access to water and sanitation, legal protection from child, early and forced marriage, as well as harmful practices. However, at the same time, these gains haven't been sustained throughout the life course, and as girls enter into adolescence, we're seeing concerning trends of increased violence and unintended pregnancies, poor secondary outcomes, and more. What's more, we continue to see pushback from anti-rights actors who seek to roll back on these critical gains made, particularly in law and policy. So, to bring some evidence to this discussion, in 2017, Plan produced the Girls' Rights, a Human Rights report, which examines the status of girls in international law through analysing references to girls and their rights in thousands of international policy documents. It also led to the creation of the Girls' Rights Platform, which is a digital hub designed to amplify the voices of girls and place them at the front of the international agenda. You can find it online, and there is a wealth of resources and tools, including our Human Rights Policy Database, which features over 10,000 documents spanning from 1948 to the present day, as well as reports and fact sheets. This provides policymakers and diplomats with a resource they can use to safeguard the negotiated achievements and to improve upon the current standards of language in international policy. It also enables youth activists like Felicity and Koratumu to expand their working knowledge and understanding of UN human rights mechanisms. But given a lot has changed since 2017, we're now updating the research and looking at really what has happened in those years since 2017 to the current day. We have two aims. The first is to see where there has been success. Where are girls' rights now recognised in international standards? And on the other hand, we want to find out where are the gaps, where are further efforts needed to protect and enhance the rights of girls. Based on the findings of the research, we hope that we'll all be able to focus our efforts more specifically on the areas where we have the most urgent need for advocacy to protect girls' rights. So the research will be finished soon and launched in the coming months, but we really wanted to take advantage of today and the annual discussion on women's rights to give the audience here a sneak preview of some of the findings. So for that, I'll let Claire take us through what's been discovered.
Great. Thanks so much, Charlotte and Felicity, for your introductions, and a big thanks to the Plan Geneva office for the opportunity to work on this really interesting project. The Global Human Rights Group is delighted to be working with Plan International on this project to provide an evidence base for understanding the progress that's being made on girls' rights in the international system over the last 5 years. We've been using Plan International's Girls' Rights platform that Charlotte told you about and its human rights policy database to research the outputs of the UN General Assembly, the Commission on the Status of Women, the UN Human Rights Council, the UPR, special procedures and treaty bodies. And our task has been to analyse the developments in language regarding girls' rights and the trends and the ways that girls' and rights issues have progressed in recent years, as well as defining or identifying the remaining gaps and developing some recommendations around how to combat the pushback that Amanda spoke about that the international community is currently experiencing around these topics. We're still undertaking this research, and so we look forward to launching the report later this year. But for now, I wanted to share with you some of the preliminary findings that we've been making. And the first area for finding is around the topic of visibility. So in recent years, girls have been mentioned more than ever before in resolutions as a category of rights holders. This is not just in resolutions, of course, but in reports, in recommendations, in outputs of the UN human rights mechanisms. So we see this identification and greater level of awareness of girls as a group of rights holders. Girls' rights issues, the issues that affect girls, have also been included more in substantive ways. They've been included in a wider variety of topics being discussed and outputs that are coming out. So we're seeing increased references to girls, first of all, in the titles and in the mandates of different mechanisms, as well as the agendas within the human rights mechanisms. So as an example, the expansion of the mandates of the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women, these titles and mandates now include girls. So it's now discrimination against women and girls. And this has led to a heightened visibility of girls as rights holders. And subsequently, this change in the mandate and greater integration of consideration of girls throughout the mandate has led to increased and more systemic focus on addressing girls' rights throughout the broader human rights agenda and the work of key institutions and other mandates, including, for example, CSW, the Commission on the Status of Women, and CEDAW, one of the other treaty bodies. So we see this, for example, reflected in the annual days of discussion that CEDAW holds, where we have increased intentionality around the inclusion of girls in the title and agenda for these events. While for mechanisms like CEDAW, the word women has always been interpreted as including girls, we've seen a rather deliberate shift in recent years to make this more explicit, to actually spell this out and make this clearer. So girls are no longer just that invisible, assumed part of women, but are actually identified. So for example, for CEDAW, the last 2 general comments include girls in their titles and in the content in unpacking what these issues mean for girls. On a more procedural note and more practical level, we've also seen the increase in participation of girls in work programs and events through the institutionalization and systematization of girls' participation as panelists, speakers, participants, etc. We just physically have seen more girls in the UN human rights system, which goes a long way to enhancing that visibility and remembering to include issues regarding girls' rights. The Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls have included girls in the framework of their thematic priorities, both in substance and in procedure. The Committee on the Rights of the Child, for example, their working methods have evolved to include greater opportunities for girls and girl children to participate in their general comments in the development, particularly for general comments 24, 25 and 26, and also in their days of annual discussion as well. So what we're seeing also, though, the flip side of this is that with increased visibility has also come increased politicisation. So these areas where we see the increased visibility are also the battlegrounds for the anti-rights agenda to address broader concerns around gender, diversity, and the family in particular. And the pushbacks in these areas mean that more and more focused energy and resources are needed just to maintain the status quo. And this is something that certainly civil society is seeing and suffering from. The constrained funding environment for most NGOs working on these issues doesn't really help. And there's a need to increase funding to ensure that organisations can do more than just play catch up in combating the anti-rights agenda and more than just maintaining the status quo. So this need to prioritise work around the main centres of perceived controversy has led to the topic of our second main area of findings for this research so far, which is the flip side of visibility, invisibility. So despite the increased normalisation of references to girls when we refer to women, so this idea that we always talk about women and girls, and the development of agreed language to refer to girls in all their diversity, the reality is that the breadth and totality of girls' diversity and their intersecting identities is still largely invisible. We've got better at talking about girls on the surface, but we mainly continue to talk about girls as a homogenous monolith in the context of traditional gender roles. So, for example, when we studied the recommendations coming out of the Universal Periodic Review, what we've seen is that almost half of these recommendations, when they do refer to girls, which has dramatically increased, but over half of them are referencing girls in the context of gender-based violence. In the treaty bodies, for example, in the concluding observations, although the references to girls have also increased, these references are overwhelmingly in the context of generic references to women and girls, and rarely do they actually unpack what the different identities for girls are, such as girls with disabilities, Indigenous girls, girls from ethnic, religious, linguistic minorities, or girls with diverse sexual orientation and gender identities. There is a need for a greater examination of the intersectionality of identities and experiences, and this is one of the main recommendations that we'll be making in this report. There is some progress on this front that's starting to show that it is possible to do this. So, for example, in resolutions of the Human Rights Council, we're seeing girls and girls' rights being included in the examination of diverse topics such as care and support, climate change, or in times of conflict and crisis. And this is also reflected in the work of the treaty bodies. For example, the inclusion of girls in the CEDAW General Recommendation 37 from 2018 on gender-related dimensions of disaster risk reduction in the context of climate change. These developments can be said to have helped break down silos between and within the UN agencies and other bodies working on these issues. And they've helped to highlight the importance of understanding girls' rights aspects of bigger issues such as climate change. Likewise, the CEDAW General Recommendation 39 on the rights of Indigenous women and girls from 2022 has led us to finally understanding a little bit more about this aspect, or recognising more of this aspect of the intersectional identities for girls. However, there's definitely a need for more progress to be made here, and more progress around understanding and seeing the myriad of ways in which girls are impacted and where their rights need to be protected. So, related to this, a trend that we've seen in our research so far is that the progress on addressing girls' rights is often inadvertently reinforcing stereotypes around girls and gender. So what I mean by this is that we're seeing increased references to girls and increased attention on ensuring progress in the areas that we traditionally think of as being key issues affecting women and girls, such as education, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and comprehensive sex education, child marriage, gender-based violence, and other harmful practices. So these areas of education, sexual health, and violence. Given that these are also the areas of pushback from the anti-rights agenda, these therefore require more resource-intensive attention just to maintain the status quo, and it means that there's less attention being given and less resources being allocated to other issues that also affect girls disproportionately. And by focusing on these traditional topics, we reinforce the value of girls as merely future reproductive entities. And perhaps this is most starkly illustrated by the fact that we've found that the main treaty bodies that address girls' rights are still, predictably, CEDAW and the CRC, the Committee on the Rights of the Child. But other treaty bodies, such as the Human Rights Committee, CERD, CAT, or the Committee on Enforced Disappearances, have made zero references to girls in their concluding observations, showing that girls are just far too often not even on the radar outside of these traditional areas. A key recommendation, therefore, that's coming out of our research is that more depth and breadth is needed in the way that we address girls' rights. There's a need to move away from these potentially tokenistic references to girls in titles and in phrases, and to build on that in a more substantive way to ensure that we have more in-depth examination of the totality of girls' experiences and the issues that affect them and the breadth of their rights. So this leads to another of our important recommendations around the need for more expertise. And by the need for more expertise, I'm talking about in mandate holders, in negotiators, and in all of us working in this area. And a recognition of the value of supporting and investing in training and capacity building for diplomats, for treaty body members, for special procedures mandate holders, and for others working in and around girls' rights. We certainly hope that the Plan International's Girls' Rights platform and this report that we're working on will play a very important role in enhancing this understanding and helping us to provide the resources to build some of this expertise. But we need a concerted commitment from all of us. We all need to support the strengthening of collective work to keep girls' rights on the agenda and to safeguard the progress that has been made. And so we're calling on the international community to adequately fund civil society's work in this regard. And I want to take the opportunity of having so many of our diplomatic community and civil society representatives here today, just to remind us all that we all have an important role to play in protecting and promoting the progress that has been made. And we can use platforms like Plan's Girls' Rights Platform to find agreed language and ways that we have already made progress and build on this and ensure that it's not further diluted during negotiations. So systematizing also the practical participation of girls to enhance their visibility is another important opportunity that we need to take hold of, and providing opportunities for girls to enable their input into the human rights mechanisms is also key. And we encourage you all to continue to support this whenever possible.
Thank you, Charlotte and Claire. As girls are the largest groups excluded globally, made even worse by intersecting marginalized identities, it is important to see these changes through, and it is inspiring to see girls leading movements in their social and political spaces. Applauding the progress mentioned, it is important to take note of the challenges, work on advancing girls' rights, and ensuring its sustainability. Our next panelist is Kurutumo. She's a fellow, she leads youth advocate, and she holds a law degree from the Faculty of Public Law. Kurutumo, before I give you the floor, I want to ask you, what does strengthening girls' rights at the UN mean to you and girls in your community?
Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Moi, je suis Kurutumo. Je suis défenseuse des droits humains et je représente les filles du programme Shield. Mon intervention portera sur les différentes actions que je mène au niveau de ma communauté pour la promotion des droits, surtout celle des jeunes filles et des femmes. À travers mon engagement, j'espère impacter les autres et puis les pousser à défendre les causes qui les tiennent à cœur. En tant que bénévole, je travaille avec plusieurs autres organisations qui sont aussi dans le domaine de la promotion des droits de la femme, de l'autonomisation de la femme. Je suis également blogueuse, ce qui me permet un peu de relater en ligne les différentes violences auxquelles certaines personnes font face et puis d'atteindre une audience assez large, ce qui permet à ces personnes aussi de se rapprocher de moi, de me raconter leur histoire et puis de pouvoir savoir où s'en tenir et aller de l'avant et surmonter ces différents obstacles qui peuvent les arriver, notamment au niveau des violences physiques auxquelles elles font face, au niveau des violences psychologiques et au niveau des violences qu'elles subissent aussi dans le domaine du travail. Et également, Conformément aussi au programme d'action de la conférence internationale sur la population et le développement, qui parle de l'importance des droits à la santé en matière à la santé sexuelle et reproductive, avec d'autres organisations aussi. Nous travaillons avec des femmes en les sensibilisant sur l'importance d'une bonne hygiène, sur l'importance d'une bonne santé en matière de sexualité et de reproduction, et également aussi sur une bonne hygiène menstruelle. Nous distribuons également des serviettes hygiéniques aux femmes dans des zones défavorisées, ce qui améliore considérablement leur qualité de vie et leur dignité. En fait, ces sessions éducatives nous permettent aussi d'approcher ces jeunes femmes et puis de discuter avec eux dans un espace ouvert, sans tabou, et pour qu'elles puissent également s'exprimer sur ce qui se passe. Sur le plan de l'autonomisation de la femme, conformément à l'objectif de développement durable numéro 5 sur l'égalité des sexes, nous proposons des formations de leadership aux femmes. Nous les offrons aussi des programmes pour le développement de leurs compétences qui les aident à devenir plus performants et également plus indépendantes aussi. Nous offrons des formations sur le numérique, en marketing digital, en informatique, ce qui les permet d'acquérir des compétences qui est vraiment important pour notre génération maintenant, vu que tout est basé sur le numérique et c'est quelque chose que nous avons vraiment besoin. Et pour celles qui n'ont pas eu l'opportunité d'aller à l'école, nous les offrons également des formations en matière de cuisine, comment faire des chips, comment faire du henné aussi. Nous les faisons des formations sur ça. Et au niveau de... Nous les apprenons aussi à fabriquer du savon. Des activités qu'elles peuvent réaliser, qui peuvent les rapporter de l'argent, ce qui va faire en sorte qu'elles ne vont plus dépendre des autres en fait. Et elles vont subvenir elles-mêmes à leurs besoins, ce qui contribue à leur autonomisation. Et ces formations techniques sont vraiment importantes en fait. Au niveau de la communauté, ça permet aux femmes de pouvoir se libérer en fait et de pouvoir contribuer à leur propre autonomisation. Ce que nous faisons aussi, nous offrons également des formations dans la communauté en matière de masculinité positive. Parce que pour les questions d'égalité des genres et de promotion de la femme, nous avons vraiment besoin de la participation des hommes aussi. Donc, nous essayons de leur faire comprendre certains aspects de leur comportement qui sont importants pour les femmes et qui permettent aussi d'arriver à leur développement et à les hisser un peu au sommet afin qu'elles puissent sortir de leur bulle qui les cancre en fait. Pour finir, je tiens à remercier chacun d'entre vous, toutes les personnes qui mènent des actions pour l'autonomisation de la femme, de la jeune fille, et également pour leur leadership aussi. En fait, chaque action que nous menons, aussi petite soit-elle, contribue à l'évolution de ces femmes et de ces enfants et de ces jeunes filles. Et je tiens également à remercier ces organisations et aussi à les inciter un peu plus à soutenir les initiatives locales en fonction de leur contexte. Voilà, c'est un peu ce que j'avais à dire par rapport à ça.
Thank you, Kurtumu. It is impressive to see the work at the global level be seen translated at the national and local levels, despite the continued challenges girls face unique to their community. It is also great to see progress being made in the digital safety of girls, and through trainings of positive masculinity, men and boys continue to join the movement towards gender equality. Last but not least, our panel today has Katerina Carvalho, Chief of Intergovernmental Services at UN Women. Katerina has more than 20 years of experience working within multilateral institutions, including UN and EU systems. She has held roles in the permanent missions of Portugal, Spain, and the European Union delegation to the UN. Dear Katerina, can you please tell us about the UN Women's role in strengthening girls' rights at the global level?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I would like to start by thanking Plan International, Child Right Connect, and the Government Australia for organizing this important event, and of course for including UN Women. Excellencies, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and girls in all their diversities around the world. It is a pleasure for me to be here, and even more after a great speaker. And I would like to, we have identified some areas of concern, but I think we need to review those after I heard what you had to say. And I think I will have some announcement that will please you. And regarding Beijing Plus 30, that it's a call for action and a call to involve all women and girls, and especially at the community level, and colleagues like Korutumu. Yep. Okay. Good. Sorry, I'm very bad with names, so I'm very happy that I managed to announce that correctly. So, I mean, as I said, I'm pleased to be here, but at the same time, when we start thinking about Beijing Plus 30 and the reflection, and we start the conversation here today, again, we need to reiterate again and again that girls' rights are human rights. And that's, for me, 30 years after Beijing, many years after CEDAW and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the need to continue that conversation and start by saying and repeating to ourselves that it's, I have to say, a little bit of concern. And as Ambassador said, and Claire very much well demonstrated the global setbacks in gender equality and human rights that we face today, and they are very worrisome, because it's with the rising of opposition threatening the very basic of our fabric and our progress. Strengthening girls' rights worldwide is an urgent and critical issue that should be at the forefront of progress and development. So we reaffirm, of course, the commitments to promote the rights of girls, the prioritization of the empowerment and protection of girls everywhere. We have different initiatives, from the Generation Equality to African Girls Can Code, Entrepreneur Her programs, Safe Cities and Safe Public Spaces for Women and Girls initiative, ensuring that no young woman or girl is left behind in our journey towards gender equality. As I said, the Beijing Platform for Action clearly underscores the need to prioritize the rights and well-being of girls as a key component to the broader agenda for gender equality and women's empowerment. As we celebrate 30 years of its implementation, we need to strengthen accountability, we need to increase resources, and we need to renew the commitments to advance gender equality and the rights of empowerment of women and girls. Some of the areas but I think, as I said, I think we need to review those areas, but one of them is definitely education as a key to empowering girls and breaking the cycle of poverty. The facts don't lie. In low-income countries, 78% of girls are enrolled in primary school compared to the world average of 88%. 31%, only 31% attend secondary school. There is a huge gap there that we need to work together in order to overcome that. Violence against women and girls, it's another area that we would like very much to work and to focus on. As the UN Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children indicates, approximately 15 million adolescent girls aged 15 to 19 have experienced sexually violence in their lifetimes. The other area is, of course, child marriage. 12 million girls married before turning 18. It means that 20 girls every minute lose the right to shape their own future. And that's something, we are in 2024. We really need to look at this and how we implement the commitments made, because we did this 30 years ago and we still have 28 girls every minute. As we hear, we can count how many girls got married today. And this is something that we really need. The international community, the UN system, the civil society organizations that need to come together and do something about it. I mean, the other areas, from climate change to artificial intelligence, that presents both challenges and opportunities for girls, because this is a space where a lot of innovation is coming, and we don't know exactly how we're dealing with it. But again, the continuous structural gender inequalities that again and again leave girls behind, and we need to focus and we need to ensure that the girls' leadership in decision-making spaces, they are in the spaces, they are sitting at the decision-making level. So finally, and I'm very pleased to share with you one of the initiatives that UN Women is preparing, prioritizing for the Beijing Plus 30, which is what we call the Under 30 at 30 campaign. Whose objective is to create global, regional, national, and community spaces for young women and girls to engage in meaningful discussions, exercise their rights, and strengthen abilities to hold duty bearers accountable to their commitments. It also aims at strengthen the understanding, participation, and engagement of young women and adolescent girls in the Beijing Platform for Action, including making the Beijing Platform for Action accessible and contemporary for young people, to what exactly Beijing means to Kotumutu and all the girls around the world. This involves creating spaces and entry points for engagement, including forums, workshops, and digital platforms. We will use innovative communications methods to increase public discourse and awareness about Beijing Plus 30 among young people and adolescents through social media, online platforms, and creative campaigns. At last, but most importantly, UN Women wants to build strong partnerships with young women and adolescent girls, led collectives and community-level partners to support young women's engagement, providing the necessary resources and platforms for participation. And this is how we will try, and we'll do our best to engage young people, because you are the future, and we need to create the next set of feminists in the world. Thank you.
Education is indeed key to empowering girls and breaking the sociocultural barriers girls face. I'm very happy to hear the work that UN Women is doing to push for meaningful participation of girls in leadership and decision-making spaces. There's a saying we use under She Leads, we say, nothing for us without us is against us. So I'm very happy to hear that UN Women is reflecting that through their work. I would like to now open the floor for questions from our audience. I would like to give the floor to the Ambassador for Human Rights of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Lita French.
Thank you, first of all, to this distinguished all-female panelist. It's rare in a Geneva setting, and I think, it's something we should just recognise the powerful voices at this table today as well to stimulate this conversation and this very important conversation about girls' rights and human rights. And there's so many different aspects to cover in this issue in the discussions, and I think the evidence is really, really valuable to recognise where the challenges remain, as you say rightly, around the rollback, and therefore how perhaps a lot of the delegations are focusing on specific areas where there's pressure, but also the need to kind of engage with wider committees and structures as well to make sure that girls are not the forgotten piece in this space. And there's much work to be done. And indeed, when I go out on country visits and I engage with young girls around the world, and I ask them, there's two things that surprise me. I guess one that surprises me, one that doesn't. One is, what surprises me most is quite often these young girls don't actually know what their rights are, and the fact that they have the same rights as the boys or as others as well. And I think that, for me, is quite scary to think that we are unable to even communicate these rights to those who need to know those, not just the young girls, but those families, the mothers and the fathers and the brothers as well. And so more needs to be done around the education of rights itself, and to know that, because we talk about empowerment, and empowerment comes from knowledge and information as well. And so I think that is really important. But then the second thing, whenever I ask these young girls, what is the one thing that will make a difference to your lives? Almost 99% of the time, it's education. education for girls as seen as a lifeline, as you said, to move away from that cycle of poverty, to lead to that economic empowerment, to kind of deliver a different perspective, a different opportunity from perhaps that their mothers may have had themselves as well. And all of these aspects very much encompasses what the UK government is trying to do through its strategy, and we call it the 3 E's. The first is education, E for education, and making sure that girls are educated around the world. And the UK is proud to lead a resolution here at the UN, jointly with the UAE, on importance of girls' education. And the last resolution we led enjoyed the support of over 100 states. And I think hopefully that empowers civil societies operating in these countries and beyond to think about, this is something you're championing. So how do we make sure that it's been delivered, and how do we make sure the capacity and the capability is there? The second is around empowerment, E for empowerment. And again, this is, we've talked about information is really important. Having girls' voices at the table is important, and having voices come to the UN is really important as well. And that is much more powerful than me speaking about young girls, or indeed another gentleman speaking about young girls. So how do we make sure we create the spaces for young girls to participate in these very important discussions that are happening in the UN? And I think that is really important. But empowerment also comes around the economic empowerment as well. And, that starts at an early stage, of course it does, but also for women's economic empowerment to ensure that they can give a different opportunity for their daughters. And the final is around ending violence, gender-based violence, because again, we know this is the barrier to ensuring that whether that education happens or that empowerment happens. And that, we've talked about and heard about, FGM and child and early forced marriage as well. And I want to, I know this week the news came through that Sierra Leone has abolished child and early forced marriage, and I want to congratulate them, because I think one of the things we can do more of in the UN is celebrate countries that are making progress and to encourage others in the region to follow suit as well and to learn from that. And so I really want to kind of make sure that we do that in the UN more so in that space. And then finally, I just want to say a little bit about the UK's bilateral approach to all of these issues. The first is we're absolutely committed to investing in grassroots organisations that support women and girls. The solutions exist, the information, the voices are there. So what can we do? And we need to make sure that resources are going to those who know best about addressing those cultural norms, those social norms, the patriotic norms, and to address those. So we need to make sure that the money is going into the right places. And the second is really to target investments towards these life-changing approaches, lifestyles, to take a holistic approach to that, and to say that the UK government has committed that at least 80% of all of our ODA funding that goes bilaterally will go to support gender equality as an objective. And, we really want to make sure that we are speaking not only in the UN platform, the multilateral space, but also making sure that where our funding goes, where our money goes, is we're making sure that women and girls do have a seat at the table, women and girls are empowered and they are educated. So I really want to congratulate the panellists for this conversation. And I know there's many, many more conversations that need to be had, not least because of some of the challenges we are facing, to make sure that the holistic approach is taken, and recognising that, as it's already been said, that you are our future. And for all countries, the rights are important, absolutely, but we cannot succeed individually or collectively, whether that's on rights or on growth or prosperity, if we do not invest in our girls for today and for the future, and very much support that agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? Question. Okay. Yes, please.
For giving me the opportunity. My name is Mohammed Bumbida, and I work with Muslim Family Counseling Services, also the Vice Chair to Girls North Bride Ghana National Partnership. I'm wondering to understand how Plan UN Women and all other bodies are effectively working with faith-based organizations to use their influence, but also the scriptures to address issues around gender-based violence, especially promoting education, and also in total promote sexual and reproductive health rights. I'm saying this because if you talk about marriages or forced marriages or arranged marriages, the very people who start and officiate these marriages are faith-based faith leaders, either imam, pastor, or clergy, or whoever. Now, what we realize is that by working together as multi-faith actors, we can minimize these issues of early marriages, because then we need to train these faith actors in knowing the real age of these girls before they even officiate, and insist on the fact that all the scriptures, I never saw in the Holy Bible, in the Holy Quran, where religion promotes marrying a girl at that age. But rather, I've seen that scriptures are rather talking about human dignity, whether regardless of the gender, regardless of the sex. So basically, people are confusing their culture into religious beliefs. Right. So I would like to know from Plan and UN Women, what are they doing? What are the pragmatic efforts they do to kind of bring faith actors as well as religious and traditional actors on board to address issues of promoting education, promoting sexual and reproductive health, ending economic violence against women, and all those. In Ghana, majority of our schools are mission schools, either Islamic, or Catholic, or Methodist schools. Yet we have these things going on again. So basically we need them, we don't need to leave them out. And I believe by doing that, we will really make headway. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, last question, please, Steve. Okay. In the interest of time, please be brief about your question and you may take the floor.
Through all girls panel, and the discourse is quite clear now that we are getting there after many years of grassroots activism. I think today is the best day I had coming to see that girls are envisioning the future, and that the speech of the UN Women and all other speakers actually lead to that direction. I think we are going towards the right direction now. And one thing I just want to flag out is that we must be aware of the current political situations in various contexts around the world, and how certain dynamics are emerging, like political Islam, pushing women at the background, creating, shrinking the space, and at the same time also the reduction of girls going to school. They stop at primary school. From primary school, they hardly get to secondary. And I think this affects them economically, socially, and their future. So the decisions that you have taken is quite clear. And I want to underscore the importance of having to deal with the grassroots. We must not forget the communities. Women-led organizations have been greatly marginalized. They hardly have resources, and they need the resources to reach out. Talk to the people who will make the decisions to be able to ensure that the girls are kept in schools, they are prevented from getting married, and here education is very key. I want to thank you all, and I hope that a lot of resources will be put together in order to fulfill this great futuristic dream as we move towards 2030. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I now would like to ask the speakers if they'd like to respond on questions raised. Okay.
No, thank you very much, and thank you so much for your questions. In regarding to girls' participation and leadership, absolutely yes. A lot needs to be done. We need to do a better job also as UN system, to work with the grassroots organizations and to involve the community level, and we are very much aware of it. And that's why I'm very pleased to share with you this initiative that we have on the Under 30 at 30. They were born after Beijing. What exactly this means to them right now, and it is important to involve them and to also understand what are because as Ambassador said, we know the solutions. We have the solutions, but something in between, we knowing the solutions and the implementation is not allowing us to improve drastically, because we have improved. I'm not saying that in 30 years there was no improvement, because I like to also see the positive side, but a lot needs to be done, and we know what needs to be done. And that's why also we are planning to have a call for action, exactly to identify what are the actions that need to be taken from now until the 2030 and until 2030 to the end of the Agenda 2030 to actually achieve the commitments that were made 10 years ago right now. And we do work with the faith-based organizations and the community and grassroots organizations, and UN Women with our triple mandate and the coordination with the civil society. We do some work, but again, we also recognizing that more needs to be done, and absolutely true that we need to engage with the faith-based organizations in a more constructive and in a more substantive and coordinated and sustained way as well. And I would very much welcome also your views and how also to deal what is the best approach, but because it's not one size fits all. And also, it's not UN Women sitting in New York or Geneva that needs to decide how to go. And I have to stop now.
I'd like to invite Charlotte Stemmer to provide a few last words.
Thank you. And also just in response to the question that was posed, I think you've really hit the nail on the head there, Mohammed. When Plan works in communities, we engage with all the stakeholders that need to be part of the conversation when we're trying to tackle some of these gender equality issues. So I just want to say a huge thank you to all the co-sponsors and the esteemed panelists. As you say, sitting here with these women in leadership positions and speaking from the floor is really inspiring, especially Felicity and Koratumu, who've shared their first-hand experience. The research has shown that often, girls are portrayed as victims. And while we need to ensure protection for girls, I think, Felicity and Koratumu have really shown the leadership and agency that we need to reflect. So there's still a lot to do. At Plan International, we look forward to working with you to keep a spotlight on girls' rights, to implement the research, and to make sure that girls and young women can still continue to participate meaningfully at the UN. I see that we're being told we're on the hour, so thanks so much.